Okay, so let's move on to the first item on our agenda. And would you like to introduce that?
Certainly. So for the next portion of the meeting, this is a public hearing, and so I'll give just a brief introduction, and then we would ask that the board president open the hearing, take comment, and then formally close the hearing. And so this is a hearing for the Livermore Valley Charter School renewal petition, and I'll just briefly go over the timeline and how we got to where we are tonight. On October 12th, the Tri-Valley Learning Corporation delivered a petition to the district office for renewal. On October 16th, we formally received the petition at the board level. On November 6th, which is tonight, we're holding the public hearing, and that will be to consider the level of support for the renewal petition. Then on November 27th, we have scheduled the time for the board to take final action to approve or authorize or deny the LVCS renewal petition. We would like to note that this is a condensed timeline. Normally it's within 30 days of receipt, formal receipt, that you would hold the public hearing, and then within another 30 days you would hold the final decision. But the Tri-Valley Learning Corporation has asked us to condense the timeline, and we complied with that request. So with that, we would ask that you open the hearing. Thank you.
Fine, so at this point, we will open the public hearing. And at this point, I have two cards. So if there are additional people who would like to speak, you can either bring cards up, or after I finish with people with cards, I can just ask you to raise your hand and we'll have you come up one at a time. But it's easier for us for records if we have the card. So if you have cards and would bring them up, that would be great. So
and actually, I'm not sure, Dr. Dunlop, if Mrs. Aderman, who's the principal of the school, I believe they have a PowerPoint, and we normally give them 3 cards worth or 9 minutes for that. And I don't know if they filled out a card because that was part of their presentation. So we might want to start with that. Am I seeing a nod? Okay, thank you.
That's fine. So let's begin with that. And please.
Thank you for your careful consideration of our renewal petition. I'm Tara Aderman. I'm the principal of Livermore Valley Charter, and I'm joined by Vice Principal Mike Waechter and stakeholders from our LVCS community. Although charter schools have existed in California for over 20 years, and there are over 1,000 charter schools in California, there still seem to be some areas of confusion that we want to clear up. Charter schools are free public schools. We do not charge tuition. We do not require or mandate donations. All donations to our annual fundraising drive are paid to our foundation group that is a separate 501c3. They're kept strictly confidential. No one on faculty or staff is privy to that information. Charter schools adhere to all state standards. Our teachers maintain appropriate California credentials for the classes that they teach. Charter schools have special education programs. We have 87 students currently enrolled in special education that are thriving. Charter schools are required to self-test and have English learner qualified teachers on staff. We just tested almost 10% of our population for EL accommodations. We believe in school choice. We believe the families of Livermore should have choices in the educational system for their children, whether traditional public, charter, or private. The choice should be theirs. Although not one of the 16 required elements for approving a charter petition, this question has come up frequently. What makes LVCS special? LVCS has a 6-year WSC accreditation. We have daily grade level staff collaboration built into our master schedule. We have looping in grades 1, 2, and 3, and 4. We've made the decision not to have early release Wednesdays. Dedication to our specialist program. We have Spanish, fine arts, music, science lab, PE, all with single subject credentialed teachers. Our 6th grade technology class is a required course. It's not an elective. We have before and after school care, our Dragon Zone program that is available to all of our students. There is no cap. We have smaller class sizes than the surrounding districts. We have an amazing intervention program that includes a reading and math specialist, including our very successful Barton program. We've implemented a kindergarten sound club. We have weekly middle school advisory class and enrichment breakout classes, more flexibility in our curriculum, budget, and staffing, a greater ability to make quick and effective changes to meet students' needs, a high level of accountability with review and renewal every 5 years, and we're dedicated to involving parents in all aspects of the school. LVCS has a strong history of fiscal success. We have a strong track record of managing cash without needing to borrow to manage these challenging state deferrals. We have a long history of clean annual audits without findings. We have successfully placed over $40 million in financing for permanent facilities based on our outstanding fiscal and operational track record.
On September 26, 2012, Governor Brown signed SB 1290. SB 1290 amends Education Code as they relate to measurable pupil outcomes in a school's charter and academic criteria for charter school renewal. SB 1290 was largely enacted to respond to the assertion of the U.S. Department of Education that California was out of compliance with provisions of the Federal Public Charter Schools Grant Program. The provisions of SB 1290 mirror federal assurances related to charter school subgroup growth as the primary consideration for renewal and revocation. Education Code 47607B requires a school that has been in operation for at least 4 years to meet one of the 5 metrics in order to be renewed. We will be presenting our findings which show that we meet not only one of the metrics, but rather meet all of the metrics that apply to us. You will not see information on metric 5 because it does not apply due to pertaining to an alternate accountability system other than API. Metric number 1. The charter school has attained its Academic Performance Index, API, growth target in the prior year or in 2 of the last 3 years, or in the aggregate for the prior 3 years. The STAR data from 2011 and 2012 show our continual growth, and as noted by the Department of Education, we have met our growth targets as a school and in all subgroups. Metric 2. The charter school is ranked in deciles 4 to 10 inclusive on the API in the prior year or in 2 of the last 3 years. LVCS has a school-wide rank of 9. Metric 3, the charter school is ranked in deciles 4 to 10, inclusive, on the API for demographically comparable schools in the prior year or in 2 of the last 3 years. LVCS has a similar school rank of 6. Metric 4, the charter school is at least equal to the academic performance of the public schools that the charter school pupils would otherwise have been required to attend. This demonstrates that the academic performance based on API is at least equal to the academic performance of our local schools that our students would have been required to attend if not attending LVCS.
Since opening in 2005, LVCS has held an admissions lottery due to being oversubscribed. Each year, the majority of our open slots are in kindergarten. Therefore, our outreach is focused on local preschools. It is continually challenging to have meaningful impact on our diversity with such few slots each year. This past year, we increased our school population from 932 to 1,096 students. Our outreach is proving effective, as shown in our current demographics. LVCS has 22 different languages represented at our one site, whereas LVJUSD has 26 different languages represented in their entire district. LVCS prides itself on our student intervention best practices, our innovative jump classes, kindergarten sound club, RTI, EL support structure, along with our special education program, allow us to meet the diverse needs of every individual student. We have 87 students currently enrolled in special education, 63 students with Section 504 plans, 91 English learners were assessed last month on CELT, and 101 students receiving response to intervention support. Over 30% of our population is receiving additional documented support to help us meet their individual needs. Regardless of the decision you make in the coming weeks, our message tonight is that we want to put the past in the past and focus on the future of the children in Livermore. In these tough times of budget cuts and deferrals, let's redirect the thousands and thousands of dollars paid in attorney fees each year back to our children and our schools. We wish for nothing less than success for all our children. Supporting LVCS should not be seen as a criticism of other options. Different children have different needs and need to follow different paths. Please support the ability of parents to choose what fits their families best by approving the LVCS petition. There's room in Livermore for as many successful schools as possible. Thank you.
Can't get that to go down. Thank you. So now we have time for people who have turned in cards, so we'll do that first. So Mr. James Smith, please. And if everyone could keep their comments to 3 minutes, it would be helpful.
About, what was it, 8 years ago?
You might sit down where, so you can be on the mic or the.
Talking to you.
I know, but we record it so people, when they watch it on TV, they will actually hear what you say. Okay.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. How's this? A lot better? All right. Good enough. So my name is James Smith, and what I understand is about 8 years ago, there was 2 excellent magnet schools in Livermore Unified School District. And ungratefully for the school board, they had to make a decision on whether to keep these 2 magnet schools open or whether they had to close them due to cost reasons. And I'm sure for those who were on the board that the decision of closing those 2 magnet schools was not an easy one. 8 years later, we're in a situation where we're looking at an excellent Livermore public school. Do we leave that school open, or do we close that school too? But I think what you're going to find is that this school is not the same as the one in the magnet schools that you saw before. First of all, the Livermore Valley Charter School doesn't have the cost impact upon the district that the 2 magnet schools had back then. I don't need to go into the details of the wonderful things that the Livermore Valley Charter School does, because Tara's already presented that, and you're going to hear a lot of that tonight. But what I do want to bring up is the opportunity to have a new era between the Livermore Valley School District and the TVLC to partner for the betterment of education for all of Livermore children. See, I kind of get the feeling that for the last 8 years, there's been a lot of conflict, animosity. Something that has actually been not helpful for any of the children in Livermore School District. What I'd like to recommend is that with the upcoming staff report that looks at the renewal of the Livermore Charter School, that is jointly done. That the TVLC and the Livermore School District actually sit down together and look at a balanced report for the board. So that when you receive the report, you are not getting a one-sided view or another person's sided view, but you're actually getting a joint perspective. I feel by having that, you will not only see the attributes and the benefits of the Livermore Valley Charter School, but I think it'll also give the district and the TVLC an opportunity to sit down and go through any questions that they have, any concerns. Because it would be ideal that if both parties came in front of the board and presented a balanced report, then the board would have what they needed to make an informed decision on whether the Livermore Valley Charter School should be renewed or not. So my proposal to the Livermore Unified School District or the board, and I'm not sure how this process works, but it's for them to reach out to TVLC and to offer them the opportunity to do so. I know this may be different. It may not be the way that the things are done in business here, but in the business I've been in, if you want to get down to a sound and accurate and decision that's right for everybody, that's the way you do business. Thank you very much, and you have a good evening.
Thank you. And we have Roxanne Kusske again, please.
So again, my name is Roxanne Kusske, and I am very proud to be on the Granada Site Council this year. I feel an obligation to speak on the subject at hand tonight. The bottom line for me on this issue is that California allows for charter school to be in the mix of public education. LVCS is a public school that has advanced the opportunity for exemplary education in Livermore. LVCS has met the state criteria for renewal. LVCS is open to all children by lottery with no tuition required, and whether or not LVCS is unionized or not is up to the LVCS teachers. I've heard the concern that approval of LVCS equals money wrenched from the district, but I still don't see it that way after all these years. I see a certain amount of taxes in the form of ADA follows my child if she goes to a public school, and it is still reasonable to me that this money goes to the public school, which educates my child. Families have different needs, children have different needs. So while I acknowledge that not all schools are on par, and understand that all schools remain works in progress, I value Livermore having decent and varied schools. Our Saviors incorporates biblical teachings. Valley Montessori provides individual pathways. LVCS incorporates project-based learning with intrinsic parent involvement. Granada offers a traditional American high school experience. I believe having alternatives adds value to our community. And getting back to LVCS in particular, they achieve exemplary STAR test scores. They reach gold status in math counts. They hold school-wide science fairs each year. They bring specialists to the classroom each week. They encourage the love of art through competition at the Alameda County Fair. They promote technological creativity through film festival participation and by staging full dramatic productions each year. And they celebrate Halloween bodaciously. My daughter is such a bright child, speaking complete sentences at 14 months, using the word actually as a toddler. But then her tiny hand shook as she learned to write. Her letters were reversed. I would tell you her name, but she's 14 and she said I can't mention it. She cried when learning to read because her eyes could not track a page. I believe my daughter will change the world, but she is very dyslexic. So it was important for me to find a school for her that was welcoming, flexible, creative, and high-performing. And part of that choice has been district schools. But I would be remiss if I did not share that my child thrived at LVCS academically from 2nd through 8th grade. It is hard to explain how LVCS is different than other Livermore schools, but my experience there was distinct and extraordinary. I pray that their charter is renewed so that other parents can have the choice I had. Thank you.
Don Whalen, please. Yeah, okay.
Hit really fast. My name is Dawn Whalen, parent of a Livermore High sophomore and Junction K-8 sixth grader. As I've mentioned in a previous meeting, I am not against charter schools in general. Charter schools are typically an outlet for students in failing schools or for experimentation with innovative education methods. This is not the case with LVCS, as stated in the history portion of their family handbook. The school start was driven out of the closing of 2 LVJUSD schools, not to create an innovative, unique school, nor was the district a failing district. In reading the opportunities and highlights offered at LVCS, it could be a list from any of the LVJUSD schools. Again, not unique or innovative to Livermore. I did attend the special school board meeting on October 23rd that was a study session for charter school oversight. I thank the staff for organizing and offering such an insightful session. I think as a whole, no one would deny a parent's right to choose a school for their child. Some parents are choosing LVCS. While it doesn't offer anything unique or innovative, LVCS does serve a population of students, and it is a proven record of staying in business. It might behoove LVJUSD trustees to consider becoming an authorizer of the LVCS charter. The staff and legal counsel may find valid reasons based on the 16 elements to deny the charter. With the positive direction LVJUSD has moved over the past 2 years, it may be that the time is right to explore this possibility with TVLC. In my review of the charter petition, I did find red flags, and there are things that I think should be considered before approving the petition. While I don't claim to be an expert on any of the educational elements, having managed budgets, I feel I can comment to some of those red flags. Banking financial records should be separate from TVLC. This will show loyalty to the charter that LVJUSD is authorizing, no commingling of funds with other charter schools under TVLC governance, and no funding of another charter, including marketing, etc. Audit exceptions and deficiencies should be reviewed between the COO and the district, and both agree on recommendations on how to resolve them. The petition states that the COO will inform the district of how and when it's resolved. The cash flow states it's corporate reserves, not LVCS. Corporate can be allocated to other purposes and leave LVCS short. What is LVCS's cash flow balance? The facility of the new property, I assume, is within the boundaries of LVJUSD. Financial projections seem inconsistent though the enrollment numbers are flat between end of year 2011 and end of year 2012. The revenue categories have almost completely different nomenclatures. The general purpose block grant has doubled. The federal revenue has doubled. Different categories and new ones from audited to projected, the CSR and lottery, etc. The expense side also raised some questions, with personnel dedicated increasing by 48%, the personnel discretionary doubled, books and supplies decreased by 84%, and service and other operating expenses decreased by 50%, and there are no capital outlays in their expenses. Should LVJUSD consider authorizing this charter petition, I encourage TVLC to act on their 9 principles outlined in their family handbook. Communicate openly and honestly with a level of transparency to the district. Collaborate. Work together by collaborating with LVJUSD to approve MOUs and best practices. Curiosity. TVLC encourages LVJUSD's curiosity and review of LVCS community. Courage. TVLC recognizes the courage of LVJUSD to step out of the comfort zone, and TVLC should have the courage to collaborate with LVJUSD in a non-defensive manner. Responsibility. TVLC take responsibility for actions as a steward of LVCS, including paying bills on time to LVJUSD over the past 2 years, averaging 50 days late each month in making facilities lease payments, and meeting authorizers' obligations as defined and agreed upon between both parties. Reflection. Reflect upon TVLC, LVJUSD's relationship and how to positively move forward with respect and integrity. Persistent. To collaboratively develop best practices between LVJUSD and TVLC. Integrity. TVLC to set an example of trustworthiness and respect towards the LVJUSD community, and for TVLC to recognize the integrity, to take ownership of and fix mistakes, and compassion. Create a safe, non-offensive environment to work together. Again, while I feel there are red flags in my review of this charter petition, I would like to end by saying that I wholeheartedly support the superintendent and her staff's work and will completely support their recommendation to the board whether to deny or approve the petition. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Now I have no more cards. Are there other people who would like to speak? We probably have time for 1 or 2 more. If not, I will recognize that I received, and I think all the board members received these, numerous emails. And after our last meeting, we discovered that we don't have really an appropriate policy to deal with emails. But like we did at our last meeting, I'm going to recommend that these go with the minutes for this meeting. Just to record that we did receive a significant number of emails generally in support of the renewing of the charter of the Tri-Valley Learning Corporation. So I'll provide those to our clerk, and she'll provide them to the secretary. And with that, then, if there are no many other comments, do board members have comments they would like to make? None there, none there. You have one. Mrs. Runyon, please.
Now I'm doing the same thing. Can everyone hear now? Okay. So I have a PowerPoint, and I'd like to just go over some of the things. I don't expect answers to these tonight, but what I'm hoping is that it gives people an idea of the areas of concern that I have. This is my question list, and the kind of things that I want to see addressed before taking the next step. So if we can start on the next page. So for me, I don't have any question about the soundness of the program. I believe that the academic program is sound. And in addition, I think the academic program is supported. We've had 900 students or thereabouts choose to go to that school. That demonstrates the support of the program in and of itself, but we've also had a number of people write to us and come tonight to demonstrate support for this. So I have no issues with those. I do have some issues that I think need to be addressed, beginning with finances. And here, I guess, is a thing where we can look at the same thing and come to a different conclusion, and that needs to be worked out. I believe that the charter school has gotten overextended on borrowing, and I've got some slides to show why I believe that, and I hope that those questions can be addressed and we can have a dialogue about it. I'm also concerned about diverting of funds. We know that the Charter Corporation has put in significant number of other petitions, Portola, Dublin, 2 that I know of in San Joaquin County. There may be others that I'm not aware of. And it's not clear to me where the funding for those efforts has come from. It's been expensive on our side to litigate through the state on the Portola Charter. It's got to have been expensive on the other side, and where is that money coming from? And, you know, we can't ignore the history of the failure to pay the bills on time. I had someone speak to me this morning saying that the reason given now is that they weren't billed. And it says specifically in the lease agreement that the rent is due on the 1st, and the rent is due and does not need to be invoiced. So to say that you don't like the structure of the invoice, for me, is not sufficient. So, you know, the question becomes, was there money to pay the bills and the bill wasn't paid? Or was there not money to pay the bills and there's financial distress? I don't know what the answer to that is, but it's a question. And then that leads me to my concerns on governance. As we talked about the numerous other charter petition efforts, I've got to think about where the focus is of the administration here. Is it on the existing charter school, which I think is a good school and doing well, or are the attentions going to be diverted to things that are significant distance away, and can appropriate attention be given in the future to the local programs? And I'm concerned about the transparency of the decision making related to the financing and the buildings. So if we can go to the next slide. I kind of dealt with this historical failure to pay the rent, but I want to walk you through the series of loans that are available. I read and marked up the bond offering documents and the appendices to that bond offering document. And so I have reference page numbers and notes and things like that where I get this information. Series of loans, $250,000 in 2005, 2.89%. $250,000 at an increased interest rate, 3.25% the next year, June 2006. Then $250,000 in August 2006, right? 2 months from the last offering. $27,500,000 on the next page, sorry. With $26 million of it being 7% over 35 years. Now I just refinanced my house and my new mortgage is 2.25%. It's a red flag to me that the interest rates that Charter's been able to borrow at have been continuously increasing. That is not an indicator to me of financial health or strength. It's an indicator of weakness that bonds were sold at 7%, unrated bonds. I believe that that's the opportunity that was had. If you use a mortgage calculator and compare the difference in the payments, the total payments for the new bond offering, and this is not even talking about the $15 million from the state. This is just the publicly sold bonds. The total payments at 3.25%, which is the current prime rate, is $45,240,000. And the payments for the bonds are going to be $73,800,000. And that's a difference of $28 million over the period of time. And unlike the bonds that the school district issues, the bond repayments come out of the general fund of the charter school, which means if they had borrowed at a normal interest rate, you'd have $28 million more dollars for educational program. That, again, to me, is not an indicator of a sound budget. It's an indicator of a structural deficit that's being masked by borrowing. Annual payments just for these loans, $2,156,000 per year starting in 2014. Again, the repayment doesn't start until 2014. That's like having a negative amortization loan. It doesn't look to me like somebody who's financially strong. The next slide, please. In 2011, the property over by Kusske was appraised for $19,275,000, and the next year, the corporation paid $25,540,000. That's a huge difference, and I'd like an explanation of why. And this next item for me personally was the most troubling thing I read the entire time, and that is that the bond issuer owned the buildings at the time of the bond issuance. I believe that they bought it from someone in anticipation of the charter school buying that building, and that to me is front running. Now, in what I do, front running is a very serious thing. Maybe in real estate that's okay, but whether it's okay to the individuals sitting in this room, you'll have to decide on your own, because I am not a real estate expert. So it really begs the question of how many ways did the bond issuer get paid, and what were the total payments to the bond issuer for participating in all phases of this transaction. Because whatever a charter school is still public money being spent, and they're accountable to the public about the way that they spend their money and the way the decisions about that money being spent are made. If I could have the next page. These are the audited financials for LVCS for 2011, which is the most recent one available and the one that's included in the bond offering. Now, when I talk about these, one of the things that's very difficult for me in looking at the books of the charter school is public schools that are not charters have an audit manual, which specifies how each entry is made and allowed to be entered into the books. And in order to be an auditor for a non-charter public school, you have to be on the state controller's list of approved auditors and comply with the audit manual. Now, it's a different process for charters. It's allowed for charters to have their books audited by generally accepted accounting principles, otherwise known as GAAP. But the problem for me in looking at that is it's not the same categories, and so they don't make sense. So I'm going to bring up some things that are highlights for me that I don't understand, and I would need to have addressed and be made to understand why things are that way. So if we look at the first slide, we see employee benefits, and you look at the first column, $282,015 on employee benefits in the education program. If you move over one column to the highlighted red box, it's more than double that, $594,000 on support services, management, and general. Not only is it double what the education program services benefits are, but it's 9% of the total budget for the charter school. That seems out of standard to me, but I am not an expert, so if there's a reason, I'd like to understand what it is. If we go to the next page, I've highlighted something else. Depreciation and amortization, $214,000. Now, the charter school is a nonprofit, so I don't understand depreciation in the context of a nonprofit, because depreciation is for a taxable entity to write off its plant and equipment over a period of time for tax purposes. So I'd need an explanation of what's going on here and what it means. If I can have the next slide. We look at rental, lease, and repairs, currently $246,390. And it appears to me what they're going to do is exchange his payment of about $250,000 for a minimum payment of $2,156,000 a year for the new facility. And this does not include the mandatory 4% reserve, which is required by the bond covenants, and it does not account for the sinking fund to repay the $15 million that has been borrowed from the state. So what I see is a huge concern that this is a very large percentage of the budget going to facilities where facilities are one of the lower expenses that the charter has now. And my concern is that it's all coming out of general fund money because of the way the charter is paid. And there just won't be that money available to the education program in the future. Now I'm going to go back because what I've said here I think is really serious. So I'm going to reiterate, I am not an expert on charter school finance. That's not a requirement sitting up here. It never has been. We're not the experts in that. If these things can be satisfactorily addressed, then I'm open to hearing it. But I need to have these kind of questions addressed because if we become a charter authorizer, we become responsible for oversight of these books. And with these kind of questions, I can't today say that in good faith I could become the oversight for this kind of financial condition. So that's where I am. And that doesn't mean that this is the totality of my concerns, but I'm trying to give a flavor of these are very different things than the way we operate. And we would have to know how to reconcile the existing books to the kind of books that we keep to see if, in fact, the charter is in good financial condition as they claim, or as I fear, the constant borrowing at increasing interest rates is an indicator of a structural deficit. So that's what I have to say tonight.
Good. Thank you. Any other comments by the board? Okay. If not, then we'll close this public hearing. Now, we have another item. Do we want to defer that, or do you want to go ahead with that?
So I think I just wanted to just reiterate as we close the other one that you're giving us direction to staff will continue with the review. We will be looking for answers to some of the questions, and in response to some of the earlier comments, Mr. Batchelor and I have had conversations. We are sending some public records requests. He's willing to accommodate those. We also have a list of questions we're forming, and we would be sitting down together to go through those. And he has expressed a strong willingness to answer the questions. No expectation of answering questions like this tonight, but through the course of the process so that we could make sure that the board gets a chance to make an informed decision so that staff makes a solid recommendation weighing all of the factors. So that has been a conversation that we've begun. And there'll be work to do throughout the probably Thanksgiving holiday as we get to a better understanding to make a full-fledged recommendation.